With Durin's arrival and the complete introduction of kit changes made for older characters, the tier list we made a few weeks ago has completely changed. It's time we analyze the best units who are not only broken in the current meta, but are also going to be broken in the future. Keep in mind, this tier list is made with the future in mind, not just the current state of the game. We'll start with the old units since they got insane buffs with kit changes and Durin's release, as well as the possibility of future unlocks with upcoming characters like Alice and Nicole. Their value has risen way higher than you might think. Starting with Venti, who was considered an average unit weeks ago, is now one of the best units for mono-pyro teams, even achieving higher potential damage than Wanderer and Xiao alongside Durin. His gameplay has changed massively. After using his burst, his normal attacks are now infused with Animo and gain 100% crit damage against enemies hit by his burst. This not only provides insane personal damage, but also makes him a viable Animo driver in electrocharge setups with Fischl, and his mono-pyro team with Durin is absolutely broken. He currently provides up to 50% damage bonus to the on-field DPS, which is even higher than Kazuha, though it lasts for 4 seconds compared to Kazuha's 8. But Venti compensates for this with his massive personal damage after the buff. The only thing holding him back is the condition to run him with another Hexen Circle member. Still, considering how many members we already have and how many more are coming, the team restrictions are not as limiting as they sound. I'll rank him as a good unit. Coming to Klee, she's undoubtedly way stronger after her buff. Her normal attack strings are now fixed, and she's guaranteed to trigger cooperative charged attack after her 3rd normal attack stage. Her constellations are also free to obtain just by doing dailies. Her value, especially at C2 or higher, is insane. She now has an overload team comparable to Arlecchino, if not better, which is a massive jump from her previous ranking. And we can't forget how strong of a support she can be in burning teams. So she'll be ranked similar to Venti for me. Coming to Albedo, he received the biggest set of buffs overall. He now provides 30% damage bonus, a huge spike in personal damage, and 150 elemental mastery, making him a perfect fit alongside Durin in double Geo setups with Geo DPS units like Navia and Ito. Or even just to fulfill Durin's buff requirement, as he can provide up to 75% total damage bonus using Archipeta. The Elemental Mastery buff can also be insane in Melt teams or Lunar Reaction heavy teams. That alone puts him in the good unit tier. Coming to Zhongli, as discussed before in the previous tier list video, he's not really the best shield option for most teams except for Dendro carries. You'd almost always prefer using Lanyan over him, especially since she's free. Zhongli is no longer recommended. Now, moving to the Liyue DPS units, Xiao, Hutao, Child, and Ganyu. All of them are power crept. While Hutao and Xiao still have some relevant teams, and Ganyu has potential as an off-field cryo applier, they're not really recommended overall. Moving on to Inazuma units, Ito and Yoimiya share similar fates. Even after Albedo's buffs, Ito's personal damage doesn't compare to modern units. Meanwhile, Ayato's situation is similar to Ganyu's. His best teams only use him as a hydro applier rather than a true source of damage. Coming to other units, Shenhei and Ayaka got insane buffs after Escafir, but at the same time, with the release of Nod-Krai and the confirmation that there's no lunar freeze, Cryo has returned to its previous state, not relevant in endgame content except possibly during Skirk's rerun patch. Coming to off-field options, Yelan remains the best hydro off-field damage dealer. Even though her damage bonus buff became useless in Nod-Krai, she's still one of the best off-field DPS and appliers. She's insanely strong with almost all non-Nod-Krai DPS units, keeping her as a top-tier option. Then we have Yae Miko. Unfortunately, her value has dropped with time. Units like Fischl, who got huge buffs, have power crept her in every situation. Even Ineffa have replaced her entirely in most teams, so she's not recommended at all anymore. Talking about buffers, Kazuha still remains one of the best units in the game. Even after Sucrose and Venti's buffs, he's still an excellent option for teams that can't afford to run 2 Hexen Circle members. His buffs are still overall more consistent and flexible to use. However, his value dropped slightly compared to someone like Xilanen since she isn't restricted by any set to provide her buffs. You'll also prefer Sucrose in reaction-heavy teams for the extra elemental mastery. So he's no longer a must-pull, but still a solid option. Moving to supports like Kokomi, she became somewhat viable again with Flins teams, providing healing, hydro application, and TTDS buff options. Even in Nefer teams, she can serve as both healer and applier. Aside from that, her Hyper Bloom and Nilo Bloom teams have always been strong, keeping her relevant. Finally, Raiden Shogun. She definitely got new teams thanks to buffs from Mona and Sucrose, and even her overload setups with Durin. But other units like Varesa or Chlorinde received similar improvements, and since Fischl and Cookie now provide better off-field utility, you don't really use her in most of those teams anymore. Coming to Sumeru, the units that benefited the most from Nod-Krai are Nilo and Alhaitham. Their teams with Lauma suddenly became some of the strongest Bloom and Hyper Bloom teams in the game. However, outside Lauma teams, they don't really have setups where you'd prefer them over newer units, so they're good but not broken. Coming to the strongest Sumeru units, Nahida and Baiju. Both provide incredible buffs, with Nahida being an amazing support for Lauma, or even a must-have if you don't own Lauma for Nefer teams, thanks to her massive elemental mastery bonus to active members. Talking about Baiju, he's currently the best healer for Nefer teams, even providing buffs to Lunar Bloom setups. Both of them are meta-defining units. Then, talking about DPS, Wanderer got a new best-in-slot partner, replacing Bennett with Durin. But Durin also buffed units like Venti, and since Venti as a DPS now provides even higher damage than Wanderer, Wanderer is no longer a recommended pull. Coming to Cyno, even with all the buffs and new team options, his DPS is still too slow to compete with modern units, making him another non-recommended option. Coming to Fontaine units, Riothslee, Navia, and Lini, all of them have received huge buffs. Lini's overload teams, Riothslee's melt setups, and even Navia's double pyro compositions are now performing close to Natlan level DPS. But if you ask me whether they're worth pulling, I'd say no. I would even rank them lower than the Hexen Circle members, since at least those units have functions in the current meta, providing buffs and having future synergy potential with Alice and Nicole. Now, coming to other DPS units, Chlorinde and Arlecchino. Both of them use Durin in their overload teams, but honestly, after the last beta, it's not that big of a difference. And seeing the potential that upcoming DPS units like Flins and Nefer can provide alongside Columbina, they're again not worth wasting pulls on right now. As I always say, if you really like them, you can make them work, but they're not recommended from a meta perspective. Coming to Neuvillette, even after doing the same tier of damage as Arlecchino and Chlorinde, he has nearly double the number of viable teams. With broken units like Furina and Shilonin in mono hydro setups, Durin and Mavuika in vape setups, and even teams with Ineffa, Lauma, and Escafir, he does have a slight edge. But again, he falls behind compared to the current big names, and seeing the Nod-Krai direction, he isn't getting any buffs anytime soon. So I'd put him at the same tier or just a bit higher than other Fountain DPS units. Coming to supports, Sijawin is just useless currently. And Xianyun does have some teams with Varesa and Zhao. She can even enable unique team types like Diluc Plunge, which makes her relevant since she provides one of the most unique team styles. But she's not really broken since you can't use TTDS with her if you also want to use her passive. That makes her much more restrictive than she appears. So I'd place her in the good units tier, mainly because she's the only unit who can trigger Diluc Plunge or Hu Tao Plunge, and she's best in slot for Zhao and Varesa teams with Furina. Talking about Furina, she's still a must-have. Some might argue she could be the next Nahida, but Nahida is still extremely strong. And with Furina being Hydro, her use cases will never fall as low as Nahida's. She also provides the option to hold Tenacity, and we can't overlook how strong her current teams are, like Varesa Electrocharge and Skirk Freeze teams, both of which are going to stay top 10 at least until the end of Nod-Krai. Coming to sub-DPS units, Emily and Chiori have fallen massively in damage numbers. Even with Durin being the best in slot burning support, Emily's personal damage just cannot match other units, and the same goes for Chiori. So I would not suggest pulling either of them right now. Moving on to Natlan, Kinich and Mualani both got huge buffs with Durin's release, but are they worth investing in now? If you want a DPS, I would place both of them higher than the Fontaine units, since their damage is relatively higher and they're some of the most FTP-friendly low-investment units. Coming to Chaska, I'd put her slightly lower since her damage is weaker than both of them. Then I'd place Mavuika as a must-pull unit. She's going to stay top 3 DPS at least until the end of Nod-Krai. Veresa is also expected to remain one of the top DPS units. And now that Flins is already released, she's not getting any direct competition soon, so she'll continue being the most versatile Electro DPS, another must-pull. Coming to the final Natlan release DPS, Skirk. She currently has the second best DPS overall, but seeing the meta with Columbina, Varka, and even Flins and Nefer being extremely close to her, Skirk doesn't really stand out. She's also not a unit who fits into multiple teams. She's heavily restricted to full Hydro and Cryo comps, meaning you can't slot in flexible buffers. And her F2P teams are weaker compared to Flins and Veresa. Finally, since she isn't getting buffs, I'd rank her around the same tier or slightly higher than Kinich and Mualani. Coming to supports, Natlan gave us some of the strongest support units we've ever seen. Starting with Escoffier, she has similar restrictions to Skirk since you have to commit one slot for the entire setup, but if you're choosing a cryo support, Escoffier is always preferred. Even without full freeze teams, she can still be used as a cryo applier or healer in most setups. Currently, if you need to invest in any cryo unit, you'd always prefer Escoffier as she has strong long-term potential to pair with future cryo DPS units as a dedicated support. Then there's Sitlali, another cryo support but more versatile. She fits into both melt and freeze setups, works with Mavuika, Skirk, and almost any Hydro or Pyro DPS thanks to her Resistance Shred and Cinder City buffs. But apart from Mavuika, at this point you might not rank her above Escoffier. Then comes Zielanen, an absolute must-have for any account. She provides Resistance Shred, works with Flins while holding Instructor, and also synergizes with Mavuika and Veresa via Cinder City. On top of that, she provides insane healing, making her currently the best support in the entire game. She works with practically everyone. Talking about Ineffa, she's currently the best Electro support, but will she stay this broken till the end? I'd say no. I see her as similar to Emily, who will always provide utility through shields and elemental application, but whose damage will gradually fall behind with time. Still, that's not happening anytime soon. For now, Ineffa is top tier. Then, coming to Flins and Nefer, both should be rated similarly, though Flins is slightly better for FTP and new players. As Nod-Krai units, the arrival of Columbina and future additions like Jehoda will massively boost their overall damage, so yes, in the DPS section, both are excellent. But they do fall slightly behind, since both are single reaction focused. Flins cannot trigger Overload, and Nefer cannot trigger Hyperbloom. However, unlike Skirk, who is both team and reaction restricted, Flins and Nefer are far more flexible, so I definitely prefer Flins and Nefer over Skirk. Coming to Lauma, she's a must-pull unit, currently the best Dendro character, with insane future potential to work with Columbina, and even to buff older characters like Kinich and Neuvillette through her Resistance Shred. Finally, coming to Durin, as marketed, he's basically a 5-star Xiangling, and we all know how broken Xiangling is. That alone makes Durin one of the strongest units in the game. On top of that, he provides Resistance Shred for Dendro, Geo, Anemo, and Electro, and unlocks the Arcane state for most units, making him insanely valuable. If I rank Durin without considering Arcane effects, he's still a meta unit for sure. But with Arcane State and his potential synergy, not only with Columbina and Varka, but also with future characters like Alice and Nicole, he becomes a must-pull, which is probably why Hoyo did what they love to do. Version 6.2 banners currently feature 3 must-pull units, and according to leaks, Columbina will be dropping right after that. Let me know if you want a full video breaking down how to choose the absolute best option between them. As for Columbina, we still don't have her kit information yet, so we'll wait for that before updating. So yes, this is the fully updated tier list until version 6.3. Let me know your opinions, and as always, until then,